Back for a bash ahead of the holidays. More debating among the presidential hopefuls. On This Week in Jacksonville, a local political science professor addressing the Republicans and then the Democrats, getting ready for center stage. Plus, if you want controversial topics in Florida, start with stand your ground or legalizing marijuana.
If they were to try it under existing state law at that time, they would have been branded as criminals. That defied common sense to me.
Senator Rob Bradley discusses two bills coming out of his office as lawmakers gear up for an early legislative session, which is less than a month away in Tallahassee. Thanks for joining us today. We also look at gun laws in California following more frustration and horror after the tragedy in San Bernardino. An attorney specializing in gun laws joins us in a few minutes. First, that terror attack in California has pushed national security to the forefront in the race for president. The Republican candidates are scrambling to establish positions that will impress voters. As a result, they are renewing their criticism of President Obama.
Good evening.
As he spoke about the threat of terrorism facing the United States, even President Obama recognized the implications it could have on the race to replace him.
Even in this political season, even as we properly debate what steps I and future presidents must take to keep our country safe, let's make sure we never forget what makes us exceptional.
The president said more U.S. ground forces would be a mistake. And within seconds of the president finishing his remarks, candidates took to Twitter to react. Donald Trump wrote, "Is that all there is? We need a new president fast." Rand Paul tweeted, "There are answers here to make our nation safe, but once again, the president seems incapable of finding them." Republicans took special exception to the president's call to strengthen gun laws.
He announced nothing new other than we need gun control, even though it would have done nothing to prevent the attack in California.
They argued that he's not taking the threat of radical Islamic terrorism seriously enough.
If this is a war, which I believe it is, then we need to act accordingly. And this president does not believe it's a war. He believes that it's a law enforcement exercise.
And every time they talk about President Obama in a negative light, the next step in the playbook for many candidates appears to tie him back to his former Secretary of State and the likely Democratic presidential nominee, Hillary Clinton.
What President Obama and Hillary and the liberals say is we need to take away the guns of law-abiding citizens.
A carefully executed strategy as Republicans position themselves at a pivotal moment in the race for president. And speaking there of Secretary Clinton, she did not directly respond to the president's speech last week, but in a recent speech, she specifically said the goal must not be to contain ISIS, but to destroy it. And with that, we welcome back Dr. Matt Corrigan, author and professor of political science at the University of North Florida. So as I read the bio, of course, I'll remind you the areas of expertise: Florida politics, Southern politics, and American presidency. So let's touch on all of those, if you don't mind. It's good to have you here again. Starting, I guess, with your views on the Republicans attacking President Obama ahead of this coming debate this week.
Well, I think the debate's going to be very important. It's the last debate before the holidays, so I think most people are really going to tune in, and probably after that, get with their families and worry about the holidays.
Tune out for a little while.
Tune out for a little bit. So it's the candidate's last chance to make a big impression. Going after President Obama in a Republican primaries is really kind of an easy way to go. I mean, candidates are going to do that. You know, the real issue came up this week with Donald Trump and his comments. And so the question is, can Trump hold on to his support? And if he does, you may see a real civil war within the Republican Party.
Well, I did want to bring that up. Donald Trump really turns into kind of a punching bag this week over his position on Muslims, saying they shouldn't even be allowed to visit America. And I guess, Dr. Corrigan, is this another appeal to anger and frustration, or is it a stumbling block, something that could block his path to the Republican nomination?
Well, I think in terms of the nomination, it might help him in some places. And I think that's unfortunate, because I think those comments are very unfortunate. But places like Western Iowa are really open to this idea of blocking lots of immigration, not just Muslim immigration, but almost all immigration. So in some quarters, it's going to help him. I think it's terrible for the Republican Party over the long term in the general election, because what you're talking about is the demographics of the United States is changing rapidly and is becoming, frankly, a lot less, non-white. And I think Republicans have to reach out, and if they don't, it's going to be very hard to win a presidential election in the future.
You've written a book about Governor Jeb Bush and the time that he was governor here, the impact there. I know you said that you got to visit with him recently. Tell me about this trip you took to New Hampshire. And that was all about these presidential candidates, right?
Right. I'm working on another book with Dr. Michael Bender in our department, and so I went up to go see some of the candidates, and I got to see Governor Bush. And he was very good on the stump in New Hampshire, because New Hampshire voters like policy. They want to have a real detailed conversation. I think the first question was on bond ratings. I mean, this
a very light topic.
Right. This was not a Trump crowd, and so he did very well there. And I think what he's going to try to do is do well in New Hampshire. That's really, if he doesn't finish in the top 3 in New Hampshire, it really is hard to see where he does well coming down the line. But Trump has so much oxygen in this race. It's either Trump or the alternative. Bush's only hope is if he becomes the alternative.
Yeah. So let me ask one more question on Republicans and then talk about Democrats. Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, they both have some Tea Party connection there. Are they the likely challengers to Trump, if not Bush?
Yeah, I think Cruz is coming on very strong. I think he's the favorite in Iowa right now. Now, let me caution your viewers that polling right now is very inaccurate, especially in a primary or a caucus. People change their minds. General election polling, you know, what we have towards November, tends to be more static, but primary polling changes. So everybody hang on. This is going to change. But Cruz is really coming on strong, and so I think he's someone to watch. Rubio has all the, I think, the potential and the fundamentals. But you mentioned the Tea Party. A lot of people in the Tea Party have said no because he worked on an immigration proposal.
So they feel a little betrayed there.
They do, and that just shows you some of these ideological tests within the Republican Party.
All right, let's talk about Democrats. It really seems like it's become a two-person race among Democrats, Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton. And the polling there in New Hampshire is different. It's got Bernie Sanders ahead of Clinton in New Hampshire, but in Iowa it's the reverse. How do the Florida voters react to what happens there?
I think they just need to watch. I think Clinton is still the huge favorite to win the nomination. I think Sanders does well in both Iowa and New Hampshire. But once you get past those 2 states, Clinton's ready to roll, especially down here in the South. South Carolina, she's up very big. And so with that caveat about polls that things will change. What's really interesting, you know, I told you I went to New Hampshire. Bernie Sanders dominated the commercials there. He's got lots of money up there. So he's going to make a strong push in New Hampshire. But at the end of the day, I just think it's hard for someone who describes himself as a socialist to get a major party nomination in the United States.
Yeah, it's been interesting to hear him talk about that. Well, socialist, but it can be okay that I'm a Democrat and a socialist, so we'll see how much more of that we hear.
Right.
Dr. Matt Corrigan, appreciate it. Remember, New Hampshire hosting the nation's first primary 2016, and we're talking about debates. Republicans debate on CNN this Tuesday night. That's in Las Vegas. And then Democrats debating Saturday night on ABC, again in New Hampshire. All right, coming up, Clay County's Rob Bradley, who joins us. The state senator discussing 2 bills important to him, one on Stand Your Ground law and another on medical marijuana. That's next on This Week in Jacksonville.
At Pollo Tropical, our guava barbecue chicken Tropi Chop makes life better under the palm. Made with flame-grilled chicken tossed in a sweet guava barbecue sauce and so delicious. Get one with a drink today, only $5.99. Pollo Tropical, life's better under the palm.
Right now, Winn-Dixie has cut prices on produce items to just $1. 3 pounds of onions, $1. Celery, $1. 1 pound of carrots, $1. Green beans, $1. And 1 pound of zucchini or yellow squash, only $1. Great food makes for a great feast at Winn-Dixie.
Snowman, look! This is the best part! The gift exchange.
Okay, honey, ready?
Ready.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, a $10 ticket. Oh, it's perfect.
Honey, aren't you going to open your gift?
Yeah, give me a minute here. I'm busy.
Okay. She really likes her scratchers.
1, 2, 3. Thanks, Nutcracker.
Where's my ticket?
Sorry?
Give your gift a little something extra. With holiday scratch-offs from the Florida Lottery, you could win up to $2 million instantly. Florida Lottery, just imagine.
For every girl and boy, it's Christmas time. Won't you please be mine? It feels so right. It's all so merry and bright.
Your holiday destination for all the brands that are perfect for Florida. Bells.
Oh, what fun it is!
best offers.
Right now, choose the 2015 Altima and get up to $1,000 bonus cash on top of existing offers. Shop your local Nissan store and choose Nissan.com.
When you've been injured in an accident, it's very important to call Harrell & Harrell early in the process. We will sit down and talk with you for free. Ultimately, our goal is to get you the justice that you deserve.
Harrell & Harrell. Don't settle for less than you deserve.
At Pollo Tropical, our guava barbecue chicken Tropi Chop makes life better under the palm. Made with flame grilled chicken tossed in a sweet guava barbecue sauce and so delicious. Get one with a drink today, only $5.99. Pollo Tropical. Life's better under the palm.
4:55 a.m. St. Johns County. 2 tractors, 700 acres, 85 workers waiting. A local farmer growing potatoes for local families. That's why when Danny gets up, he turns on Channel 4. With an hour-by-hour forecast, Richard Nunn tracks storms right to these fields, keeping him ahead of bad weather all day long. On this farm, Danny makes delicious mashed potatoes happen. In Jacksonville, the morning show makes mornings happen.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
State Senator Rob Bradley from Fleming Island joining us this morning. Looking ahead to the legislative session, believe it or not, less than a month away. You guys start early this year, right?
We normally start in March, Kent, and this year we're starting in January, so it's a little different.
As you get ready for that, that means lots of committee work done here in these fall and early winter months. One of the things that stands out, I know there's a bill concerning Stand Your Ground, a proposal that you are working on here. What does that do? What does it say?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Ken. It's good to see you today. As you know, the Stand Your Ground law in Florida basically provides that if you're in a place that you're allowed to be, whether it be your home, your car, in a parking lot, then if someone tries to kill you, you have a right to defend yourself. You have a right to stand your ground and defend yourself. And recently, the Florida Supreme Court, I think unfortunately, had a decision in the Bretherick v. State case that many of us who are of the conservative mindset believe misinterpreted legislative intent. They basically held that in the Stand Your Ground immunity hearing, that the burden of proof resides with the defendant rather than the state. And it's a fundamental tenet of criminal justice that the state has the burden of proof in criminal proceedings. And so this
bill...
kind of
flipped that, is what you're saying.
Yeah, the court flipped that. And the liberal bloc of the Florida Supreme Court, we believe, misinterpreted legislative intent. The conservatives who are on the court that were in the minority, I agree with them and agree that the burden is always with the state when it comes to issues such as the right to defend yourself and justifiable use of force.
So, and your career, thank you for your public service as a state senator, but your career is in law. So this is where you live. You think this needs to happen. Is there a House component that is doing likewise? Don't they have to marry up, Senate and House?
Well, actually, the House bill is having a little more trouble than we're having in the Senate. The House bill got caught up in a committee, but it's really moving through the Senate rather quickly. I expect it to be on the floor either the first or second week of session. We in the Senate intend to send the bill over to the House and hope they will take it up and adopt it as law. It's a bill that really has bipartisan support now. I was pleased that Senator Gibson, a Democrat, my good friend and colleague from this area, supported the bill at its last stop. So I feel good about its prospects.
So some bipartisan support. That's Senate Bill 350 or 344, that Stand Your Ground proposal. There's one that I saw, Senate Bill 460, characterized as an expansion of right to try. Maybe explain this, because I know this goes back a couple of years. You were able to work on something pertaining to medical marijuana.
It does, Kent. You may recall a couple of years ago, I sponsored a bill, and it fortunately became law, called the Compassionate Medical Cannabis Act of 2014. I was approached by families, not only in our area, but around the state of Florida, who had children who were suffering from intractable epileptic seizures, sometimes hundreds a week. And they wanted to try a non-potent form of cannabis, of medical marijuana, that was not smokable. And if they were to try it under existing state law at that time, they would have been branded as criminals. That defied common sense to me. And we opened up the door to allow those parents and their suffering children to have access to this treatment. And this bill that I filed this year expands those opportunities to people who are terminally ill. Since that bill passed a couple of years ago, I've had many constituents come to me and say, Senator Bradley, we appreciate what you did, but it didn't go far enough.
Go far enough, huh?
Yeah, I remember talking to a constituent of mine it was an elderly couple. She is unfortunately suffering with terminal cancer. And for pain relief, all she gets are powerful narcotics. And her husband came to me and said, we need other options. We would love to have the option to have medical cannabis to help her with her pain, to ease her suffering. And those individuals are not criminals. They were people who are deserving of our compassion and support. And so I was happy and proud to file that bill, and it's moving through the process as well.
Now, I mentioned a moment ago that you're an attorney. There's a famous attorney, if you will, in the state who promotes, I'm talking about John Morgan, promotes medical marijuana. Are you guys on the same side of the fence, or is it a different issue when I hear these advertisements for him?
Sure. It's a fair question. You know, I think that this is an issue that we are going to be dealing with in the state of Florida for many years to come. If I look around the country and I see what's happening in California, I see what's happening in Colorado, and in my estimation, they've done it all wrong. I really don't think that the way to attack this issue is through a constitutional amendment. That's like taking a sledgehammer to a problem that really requires a surgeon's scalpel. And so that really is the job of us as elected legislators to handle this in a reasoned fashion, to listen to the evidence, to listen to the research, and do this in a measured fashion rather than taking that sledgehammer of a constitutional amendment. I think this is the right way to go.
Senator Bradley, appreciate it. I know those are two of the issues among many that we'll be hearing about in the coming months here, beginning of 2016. Thanks for your time today.
Great to see you, Kent.
Thank you. Stay with us. We're looking at a different element to weapons in society coming up. A gun laws expert with analysis on the tough rules already in place in California. That's next on This Week in Jacksonville.
Your gateway to the luxury world is here at North Florida Lincoln. Come meet the face of forward thinking. Make a statement in this 2015 Lincoln Navigator. Lease at $759 for 36 months. North Florida Lincoln. We've set the stage for luxury.
This is Pastor R.J. Washington of the Titus Harvest Dome. Join us on Channel 4 every Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. We're going to have a God time. Yes.
After I woke up from my accident, I found I lost my 4 front teeth. The Highbridge implant team put my mouth back together again. They took the time to explain all the options. They could do one tooth or the entire mouth, whatever's needed. The technology behind Highbridge implants is amazing. But I think what most people notice is the artistry. That's what makes them special. I am so glad I chose Highbridge. It really is the simple way to a lasting smile.
Do you still have holiday shopping to do and you plan to do it online? If you want to have your packages delivered by Christmas, most popular stores have a deadline and some are next week. We'll break down the list for you Monday at 6.
Still making your holiday travel plans? You know, there aren't a lot of travel agents out there these days, but there are some who are still in business. Can they get you a better deal? Can they get you a better room? Find out Monday.
The Morning Show on Channel 4 makes mornings happen. Crime alerts, scams, rip-offs. News 4 Jack's crime and safety analyst Gil Smith is here to help keep your family safe.
He's always looking out for you. Gil Smith has helped me protect my children.
A unique take on breaking news.
He's getting in, he's rolling up his sleeve, and he's already assessed the situation.
When crime hits close to home.
He puts me at ease. Gil Smith's got my back.
I would definitely say Gil has my back.
I'm News 4 Jack's crime and safety analyst Gil Smith, and I've got your back.
Beaches or Riverside?
Mayport, with all those hot American sailors.
Gators or Knowles?
Oh, I'm scared of gators.
St. Augustine or Amelia Island?
St. Augustine Wine Festival, Bernardino Beach, both.
Shrimp and grits or barbecue sandwich?
No, so many carbs.
Watch Hot in Cleveland 5 nights a week at 8 p.m. And then stick around for the 10 o'clock news with Mary Bear and Tom Wills. Only on Channel 4, the local station.
Your gateway to the luxury world is here at North Florida Lincoln. Come meet the face of forward thinking. Make a statement in this 2016 Lincoln MKZ. Lease at $320 for 36 months. North Florida Lincoln. We've set the stage for luxury.
Imagine running over your best friend's little girl. The terrible accident and their extraordinary act of forgiveness. Watch the next Inside Edition.
Monday at 7:30 on Channel 4.
Thanks for staying with us. Leslie McKinney joins us, an attorney in Jacksonville at the law office is David Goldman, focusing on gun legislation and litigation. You've been with us before on our program. I appreciate coming back.
Thank you for having me.
Obviously, there's a big topic right now about guns because of the violence we've seen, whether it was something like what happened in Colorado Springs, where somebody's upset about an issue, or a homegrown or domestic terror attack like we saw in San Bernardino. So I want to talk about a couple of those issues and maybe even start with what we heard President Obama talking about a week ago in his speech to the nation about ISIS and terror. Also brought up, hey, we need stronger gun laws. So walk me through some of that, and I guess starting in San Bernardino. How did the gun laws there impact the tragedy that we saw unfold? Is there a connection?
Not surprisingly, they really didn't. California has some of the strictest gun laws in the country. They have full gun registration.
What does full gun registration mean? If I have one, I'm registered, right?
There is a form that has to be filled out and gone to the state. For guns that somehow have fallen through the cracks and haven't had the form filled out, people are encouraged to fill out the form, because if the gun is ever stolen or anything happens to it, they can't get it back without the gun being registered. But even private sales, if I were to sell a gun to you, here in Florida, we could just do it. In California, we have to go to a dealer, do the background check, fill out the registration form. Same at gun shows. If you are moving into the state with handguns or firearms, you're considered a personal weapon importer, and you have to register all your firearms within, I believe, 60 days of residence. So there's a full registry, full background checks, which is actually double the background checks in Florida, because at first they do a state one, and then they do the federal database check. They have strict limitations on the types of firearms and accessories that are allowed. There's about a 90-page law enforcement book that is a picture book of, if it looks like this, it's an assault weapon and it's not allowed.
And in that case, if they see that, confiscate it or take it.
Yes.
So there's something that's been going around in terms of stricter gun laws, even something on the pushback against potential terror attacks. Some in Congress are trying to say, let's enforce this no-fly, no-buy rule. So if you're on a no-fly list, you can't buy a gun. What do you think about that?
In theory, it doesn't sound that bad. In reality, to me, it strikes me as a brilliant marketing ploy. It's the terror watch list, which, to be put on the list, there's a very low threshold. You could call in right now, give a first or last name, an approximate age, an approximate physical description, and you saw someone doing something suspicious. That's the form that they'll fill out to put you on the watch list. It is...
Nothing has to be verified. I just have to have a complaint against me, and I could be on the no-fly list?
Exactly. And the threshold is very low, and it is filled with errors. Latest estimate is that there's approximately 1.2 million people on this watch list. It would be hard to argue that the government is allowing 1.2 million terrorists to be walking free in the streets. If you attempt to be removed from the list because you were entered onto it in error...
That sounds legitimate. I would want to do that if I was on the list in error.
Exactly. Right? The Attorney General, who's over the Department of Justice, who takes care of this list, does not have to show the reason why you were put on it or tell you why you were put on it. If you go to court, the judge can demand to see it in his chambers away from you but isn't allowed to consider it when he's determining if you're going to be removed from the list. So far, we've only been able to find one person entered onto the list in error who has been successfully able to legally challenge it and be removed.
So it's not a matter of you're saying, hey, the idea of doing something to keep guns out of the hands of potential terrorists, you're not saying that's a bad idea. Just doesn't sound like this no-fly list would pass your test on being effective.
Correct. We're essentially stripping someone of a constitutional right based on conjecture, no need to prove it, no due process, and they can't fix it when it's wrong.
All right. I want to bring up one of your colleagues, somebody else, a local attorney who's been on our show as well. Cord Bird is a gun rights lawyer, if you will, and sent us a statement here earlier this week. In his address, the president asked the following question: what could possibly be the argument for allowing a terrorist suspect to buy a semi-automatic weapon? Well, Mr. President, the answer to your question is the Constitution. Mr. Bird goes on to say that the government should not take away constitutional rights of people who are suspected of crime. If the government believes that it can establish probable cause for an arrest and then establish evidence beyond a reasonable doubt to convict, then it should do just that. That sounds a little bit like what you're saying here in terms of no-fly list being the reason somebody couldn't buy a weapon.
Exactly. I agree with what Cord said. I know him well. The question really...
We've got about 30 seconds left.
The question really becomes, what other constitutional right would you be willing to strip from the American people based on such low of a threshold? How low can the standard go that we're willing to accept it for any other fundamental right?
You know, a lot of discussion here. Our first guest today was talking about this is going to be something we're hearing about in the presidential campaigns as well. And appreciate hearing another voice from you today. Leslie McKinney, thanks.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you for joining us this morning. This Week in Jacksonville airs each Sunday morning at this time. You know, JTA just launched the First Coast Flyer. Their CEO has won awards presented at the White House. So, Nat Ford joins us next week. I hope you'll join us. In the meantime, I'm Kent Justice. Thanks for watching on air and online at news4jax.com.
At News 4 Jax, we're always covering the news, even when we're not on TV. Stay informed, on the go, and online at news4jax.com.